Our agenda is relentlessly pro-worker.
As the world gears up for another Trump term, his supporters are still pushing the lies that he's pro-worker, anti-war, and all about draining the swamp. Whatever that means. But as we will see, not only is this not true, it's the complete opposite of who Trump really is.
I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike and you say, that's okay, you're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone and you are the greatest. You would be very good. Oh, you would love it.
Nothing like two billionaires laughing about walking all over striking workers. That's great. That's awesome. We've already talked about Trump's pro-war record on this channel and argued against the idea that he's some kind of populist who actually cares about regular people. So in this video, we're going to focus on all the ways he's made life harder for the working class, whether it's through anti-labor policies, cutting programs that help everyday folks, or constantly prioritizing corporations and the ultra-rich at the expense of everyone else. But first, let's look at how we got here. Since the introduction of neoliberal policies, wealth inequality has increased drastically. The everyday person has seen a stagnation in wage growth, weaker worker protections, fewer benefits, and so forth, while corporations and the rich have seen their profits and net worths skyrocket. Now, you might look at the GDP of an economic superpower like America and think, wow, these neoliberal policies have generated immense wealth. To which I would say, you can't eat GDP. Although it's a useful metric to gauge how much an economy produces, it doesn't fill you in on how that generated wealth is distributed. The neoliberal era championed policies that assured that the rich and powerful were prioritized at the expense of everyone else. The logic was that if we facilitate immense wealth concentration for the rich, then maybe they would use said wealth to lift everyone up and prosperity would trickle down to the rest of us. This has yet to happen, leading some people to argue that neoliberal policies were an immense mistake and the logic behind them was flawed. But I'm here to tell you that I think those people are wrong. These policies did exactly what they were intended to: benefit the rich and fuck over everyone else. Fast forward to the modern day and we have a guy like Trump who seems to use all the right words and sentiment when pretending to be a man of the people. He'll gesture at the state of the world and rightfully point out that shit's broken. It's not hard to understand why people fall for his rhetoric, especially when his political counterparts are, for the most part, run-of-the-mill status quo politicians who tend to shy away from acknowledging the fact that this neoliberal system has done great damage to the working class. In stark contrast to Trump, they put great faith in the institutions of their countries and on occasion scold the public for not sharing the belief that those institutions are always 100% benevolent. Now, this is not me saying that Trump is better than his counterparts. As this video progresses, you'll see that he's a great deal worse. He's just better at marketing himself. He's full of a lot more shit. And that's saying something. In short, in both of his campaigns, Trump was upfront and acknowledged that the system was broken. He promised change, and clearly people want change. The issue is, this populism of his is fake. Instead of genuinely tackling those aforementioned policies that benefit the rich at the expense of the poor, his version of populism is that of many other right-wingers throughout history: to pit working-class people against each other, move the crosshairs away from corporate greed and onto immigrants. He'll make you believe that they're the reason crime is high, even though historically it's not. They're the reason you can't find a job. They're the reason you can't buy a home. He'll get you to take issue with them, not him and his posse full of billionaires and CEOs. Since populism is the idea of looking out for the masses and the common folk in opposition to a group of elites or technocrats, Trump, himself being an elite, he is a billionaire, needs to find a different group of elites to serve as a scapegoat. In many instances, right-wing populists, as opposed to their left-wing populist counterparts who openly challenge corporate greed, will spare the corporations and the ultra-rich and instead try to convince you that the real group of elites that need to be taken down are actually some shadowy cabal of academics, or the deep state, as Trump puts it. But it's actually him. He and his sycophants and his ideological ilk are the problem, and this video will prove it. In 2017, Trump proposed his infamous tax cuts for the wealthy and large corporations, with the cost covered by slashing essential programs for the most vulnerable. These went into effect shortly after. The tax cuts were heavily skewed toward the rich. By 2025, households in the top 1% will see an average tax break of over $60,000, while those in the bottom 60% will see a tax cut of less than $500 on average, according to the Tax Policy Center. The tax plan was also incredibly expensive, with the Congressional Budget Office estimating that it would cost $1.9 trillion over 10 years. To make things worse, according to recent estimates, if Trump's tax cuts for individuals and estates are made permanent, it would cost the government roughly $400 billion a year starting in 2027. This, combined with the tax cuts from the Bush era, has severely eroded the country's revenue base. This significant loss of revenue makes it harder to fund important services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Despite promises that the tax cuts would benefit the economy, they largely failed to live up to the hype. Trump and his administration argued that cutting the corporate tax rate would lead to higher wages and a $4,000 increase in household income. However, as is often the case, the anticipated trickle-down effect failed to trickle. Research found that workers making under $114,000 in 2016 didn't see any boost in pay after the corporate tax cuts, but top executives experienced a stark increase in pay. I always find it rich how people in the MAGA movement claim to despise neocons like George Bush when Trump's neoliberal policies served the exact same purpose. They prioritize corporations and the ultra-rich over the working class. Now, if you thought Trump learned his lesson from his first-term tax cuts and won't make the same blunders again, you would be mistaken. His proposed tax policies for his second term are just as unhinged. According to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, his proposed tax plans would, on average, lead to a tax cut for the richest 5% of Americans and a tax increase for all other income groups. If you look at this graph, you can see everyone except for the richest 5% are actually getting a tax increase, while the next 4%, those who make between $360,000 and $915,000, get a $7,000 tax cut, and the next 1%, the millionaires, get a $36,000 tax cut. The ITEP is calling Trump's proposed tax plan Robin Hood in reverse. For those who don't know, Trump is infamous when it comes to cheating workers out of overtime pay. Even before he dabbled in politics, he and his companies faced an array of accusations claiming he would exploit and underpay workers. From undocumented Polish workers who claim that Trump forced them to work long hours in unsafe conditions and failed to pay them overtime during the construction of Trump Tower, to similar allegations coming from employees at his golf clubs. Although Trump denies any wrongdoing in these instances, even after settling in court over them, he did little to clear his name when it came time to implement some policies during his first presidential term. The U.S. Department of Labor under the Trump administration announced a rule that set the salary threshold for overtime pay at about $35,000 a year, replacing a 2016 rule that would have raised the threshold to about $47,000 a year. The Trump administration abandoned the 2016 plan, and its supporters claimed that by implementing their lower threshold, they were actually helping workers. But here's why that's not true. Even the proposed 2016 rule that would have raised the threshold to $47,476, while a significant improvement, was still a major historical decrease. Back in 1975, about 60% of salaried workers earned below the threshold, meaning they were automatically eligible for overtime pay. By 2016, only 7% of salaried workers fell below the threshold, and the proposed 2016 rule would have only partially corrected this, covering about 33% of salaried workers. Put simply, the salary threshold determines who is automatically entitled to overtime pay. If the threshold is too low, most salaried workers aren't eligible for automatic overtime pay, making them more vulnerable to being overworked and exploited. The Trump administration's new rule left millions of workers behind, excluding an estimated 8.2 million people who would have gained stronger protections under the 2016 rule that he scrapped. Not only does Trump make life harder for workers and working-class consumers, but his policies made it easier to prey on the financially vulnerable. Historically, non-bank financial institutions like payday lenders, online lenders, and others have been subjected to strict interest rate caps to curb excessive usury. These caps prevent lenders from charging borrowers excessively high interest rates. This is a mechanism designed to protect low-income individuals and working-class people from predatory lending practices. To bypass these interest rate caps, non-bank lenders began partnering with banks, as banks are often exempt from these state-level interest rate limits. This created an arrangement where payday lenders and similar actors could partner with banks to bypass usury laws. Here's how it worked. Payday lenders, or other non-bank lenders, attract customers who are willing to take out loans with high interest rates. They often prey on low-income or desperate people willing to take such a risk. They partner with a bank to provide the actual loan funds, but the loan paperwork lists the bank as the lender. Once the loan is finalized, the bank sells the majority of the loan back to the payday lender or an affiliate. Now, the payday lender is using the bank's name to charge higher interest rates while avoiding lending restrictions. It's a scummy way for these non-bank lenders to utilize the lack of state-level interest rate restrictions that banks enjoy to make more money at the expense of vulnerable people. To combat this, a legal concept called the true lender doctrine was used to determine who the true lender is, regardless of whose name's on the loan. This was done to ensure non-bank lenders weren't evading state usury laws. Then, under the Trump administration, a regulation called the True Lender Rule was issued. This rule was a regulation that clarified that when a payday lender or other non-bank lender partnered with the bank would be considered the true lender if it was named as the lender in the loan agreement or if it originally funded the loan. As a result, non-bank lenders were able to bypass state usury laws and interest rate caps and issue unethical, high-interest loans, further enabling predatory lending. So yes, the Trump administration aided a system that thrives by exploiting vulnerable everyday people, and he still has the gall to parade himself around as anything other than a corrupt elitist prick. In addition to this, Trump has been an open critic of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, one of the few government agencies that actually make life better for everyday people and protect them from things like predatory loans and lenders. In Trump's first term, he slashed the CFPB's budget and abandoned regulations designed to protect consumers. With his second term on the way, he and his sycophants are already placing the CFPB in their crosshairs, with Elon Musk saying he wants to delete the agency. It's rich watching Trump and his posse full of billionaires flippantly attack the regulations and agencies that actually protect the working class while somehow still benefiting from the veneer of populism. Apart from the fact that Trump's NLRB was aggressively anti-worker and nearly every decision he made seemed designed to benefit corporate America at the expense of the working class, let's fire off some honorable mentions to wrap this video up. Trump made it easier for employers to punish or fire workers who demand better pay, better conditions, or go on strike. Trump and the Republicans have been hostile to the PRO Act and the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act. These are major laws designed to help workers and unions. The PRO Act would make it easier for workers to join unions, protect them from being punished for organizing, and stop companies from interfering with union efforts. The Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act would give public sector workers stronger rights to bargain for better pay and better working conditions. In addition to his anti-labor record, his policies in areas such as health and social programs consistently put corporate greed over human well-being. He supported a lawsuit to remove protections for people with pre-existing conditions, making it so that health insurance companies can discriminate against them. He presided over a significant increase in prescription drug prices, and then he threatened to veto legislation aimed at reducing them. And he prioritized pharmaceutical company profits in NAFTA renegotiations. Trump signed a resolution to overturn the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces executive order, which had been put in place by Obama. This order was a step toward making sure federal contractors followed labor and civil rights law and didn't use mandatory arbitration to avoid disputes. After Trump repealed it, Christine Owens from the National Employment Law Project criticized his decision, saying Trump sided with big corporations over workers' rights. She argued that the order was a simple way to make contractors prove they followed the law, and by repealing it, Trump let companies with bad records off the hook, hurting workers, taxpayers, and honest businesses. Trump actively encouraged outsourcing by pushing a tax cut that gives companies a 50% break on foreign profits, making it profitable to move jobs overseas. He ignored bipartisan efforts to stop offshoring, including requests from senators and union leaders to block federal contracts for companies that send jobs abroad. Despite promising to fight offshoring, he awarded over $115 billion in federal contracts to companies that outsource jobs. He presided over the loss of hundreds of thousands of domestic jobs, even though he campaigned on bringing them home. The list goes on, but you get the point. It's understandable to want change after decades of neoliberal bullshit, but the idea that Trump is anything but part of the problem is mistaken. As much as I criticize the Democratic Party of America, there is some credit I can give to a guy like Biden when it comes to his labor record. Foreign policy was shit, but nonetheless, His NLRB was doing great, and he successfully brought 800,000 outsourced jobs back home. Similar praises can go to a guy like Tim Walz, who boasts achievements like supporting sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers, voting against outsourcing, protecting construction workers from wage theft, and so forth. With all that said, even though slight wins have been secured by some members of the Democratic Party, they are still confined to and operating within a system that prioritizes the financial well-being of corporations and the ultra-rich over the working class. It's important to understand this and have honest conversations about it, but those conversations should start with the acknowledgement that Trump is nothing more than an opportunist who knows the right things to say, even though he does the opposite. That's all I got for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe. And if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down, comment in a mean way, and still subscribe. Thanks.